The Cambodian genocide was one of the most tragic events to ever take place in the country of Cambodia, and it is one that reshaped the country's future forever. In the 1970s, nearly 3 million people lost their lives at the hands of the Khmer regime, and every Cambodian family was directly affected. In this video, I will be sharing my experiences of visiting the killing fields and S21 prison, where many of the victims were brought to and spent their very last days. This is going to be an emotional video, but it is one that is needed to fully understand the history of what took place here in this country. Learning about the Cambodian genocide is something that you have to do when visiting the country, not only because it had a great impact on the reason why the country is the way that it is now, but also because it affected literally almost every Cambodian person that you're going to be meeting during your travels here in the country. Less than 40 years ago, one of the largest genocides in the world took place here in this very country, and it's quite sad that a lot of the world actually never really learned too much of it. I'm gonna go ahead and be completely honest. I only really learned about the Holocaust and World War II in school, and I didn't know about the Cambodian genocide until about 4 years ago when I was actually planning on visiting the country for my very first time. So this video, I'm gonna try my best to describe my experiences firsthand on what I've seen at the different museums and the sites, and hopefully I give you guys a good insight on what you can expect when visiting both the killing fields and the S21 Genocide Museum in the center of Phnom Penh. Now, the first thing I want to talk to you guys about are prices. So the Genocide Museum in Phnom Penh actually only costs $5 but they do have an audio guide that I highly recommend getting, and they have it in over 10 different languages. And I'm just gonna throw it out there, it's needed. If not, you're just gonna be walking around looking at a building with some cells and not really know exactly what took place there. So definitely get yourself the audio guide. It only costs another $5, so $10 in total, and you're gonna have all the facts you need. You're gonna know exactly what took place and what you're looking at the entire time. And let me just tell you, it was the best $10 I've spent in the country so far. Now, at the killing fields, it's actually only $3 to enter, but there are local guides that work at the entrance that speak incredible English. I'm not really too sure about other languages, and they charge you $10 to take you around for 30 minutes and explain all the different sites to you and exactly what took place there. Now, the craziest thing about hiring the guide is that they are all people who have lost family members in the genocide, and actually most Cambodian people that you'll meet in the country have all had a relative or a close relative that has passed away due to the horrible genocide of Pol Pot and the Khmer regime. So please bear with me. This is going to be something very hard to talk about, and I'm going to try my best, but I'm also not a historian. I'm just sharing my side with you because I feel like if I'm sharing the street food, if I'm sharing all the fun things with you, then it is also important to talk about this extremely sensitive topic, because the best way to learn about a country and its culture is to know about its history. And this happened less than 40 years ago. So let's jump right into it. In the S21 prison that's located in the middle of Phnom Penh, it's a great way to start your trip in Phnom Penh and in Cambodia as a whole. I actually wish that I would have went there on my very first day in the country, because it would have gave me a better understanding of why the country is the way that it is, why it lacks in infrastructure, why the people are the way that they are. And it is a mandatory stop when you're in Cambodia. In the S21 prison, what you're gonna find are cell blocks where over 20,000 victims were actually tortured and interrogated by the Khmer regime from between the years of 1975 and 1979. Now, the S21 prison was one of over 100 torture prisons that were built by the regime, and this one wasn't actually built by the regime, it was taken over by the regime in 1975. The S21 prison was actually a high school that operated as a high school for over 20 years, and it wasn't until the regime got a hold of it that it actually turned into a torture prison. Now, when the regime first invaded the high school, what they did was boarded up all of the windows and filled in all of the air ventilation systems with concrete so that no one on the outskirts could actually hear the screaming, and so that the victims that were inside couldn't have the proper air supply and essentially torture them. So inside of the S21 prison that operated for 4 years, I mentioned earlier, 20,000 people lost their lives.
They were tortured, they were beaten by garden tools, and many even suffered gunshot wounds and were just tied up, left to their bunks to die. Now the crazy part is that they also used a lot of the equipment that was left behind by the school as torture devices. There was actually a big like tetherball pole that was used to hang victims. There was a big volleyball area where victims were actually hoisted up and their heads were stuck into containers of human sewage, and people were left there hanging for hours on end until they completely passed out. And it wasn't until they were dropped onto the ground and they revived themselves that they were hung back up again and tortured. Now the reason why the Khmer regime actually tortured these victims was because they wanted to know who their family members were and how many more members in their family were still alive, so that they can go and arrest them and bring them to either the killing fields or to the prisons. One of the things that the Khmer regime actually targeted, and actually this is where it gets really, really difficult, and this is where it is very much different than other genocides that we hear about in history, and this is why this event is actually a lot more different than the Holocaust, was because here they actually targeted Cambodian people, the Khmer people. It wasn't like a segregated group. It wasn't, oh, because your nose was big or the religion that you preach here. It was all Cambodians were a target. Mainly those who were intellectuals, those who were doctors, lawyers, artists, who had a skill that they felt could be vulnerable to the regime. So inside of this prison is actually where a lot of the doctors, lawyers, very educated people were brought to and tortured until they spoke up about their family members and their professions. Now, in 1975, when Pol Pot actually overthrew the government and came into the city of Phnom Penh with all the Khmer regime soldiers and cadre, one of their tactics to get everybody to leave the city and to join them was that they actually came in and said that America was going to be dropping bombs on the city of Phnom Penh and they wanted to save them. So they basically just threw everybody into trucks like cattle and moved them over to the countrysides. Little did they know that that was going to be their last time home, that their whole lives were going to change after that event. And so in 1975, when that event took place, millions of families were displaced throughout the country. And let me just tell you something. In 1975, the population in Cambodia was somewhere around 7 million people. Over 3 million victims died throughout these 4 years. So nearly half of the population. Super, super sad, terrifying, and hard to believe that that took place after World War II, after the West had already lived and learned about everything that had happened in the 40s in Germany and Poland and the rest of Europe. So very surreal. But yes, so once the families were actually taken away from the city center, that was actually when the Khmer regime started building these prisons like S21. And inside of S21, what you're going to find are not only photographs of many of the different cadre, but you're also going to find many photographs of the victims. You're going to find skulls that were recovered from this incident that belonged to many victims. And you're also going to find a lot of the torture devices that were used, such as the big tanks that were used for waterboarding. What else did I find? Like human stretching devices. Just some very horrific things. You're also going to find an area where there are a lot of cells, both the very first style of cells that were made out of bricks, and also the second style that were made out of wood. And you're also going to be able to see the hooks, the shackles, where people were chained up for days on end, eating little to nothing, and basically being starved to death for no reason at all, just because one man wanted to convert the whole country to an agricultural state and make everybody the same. So very, very interesting. Hello. You got a lot of little kids watching me. So very, very crazy, and yeah, sad to see. Now here at the actual I got like 4 kids watching me right now. Now what took place here in the killing fields was actually completely different, because this is one of the areas where a lot of the people from the city were actually brought to. And here in this very killing field that I'm in right now, I believe it's called the Chung Elk, 20,000 victims lost their lives. Now what I found super super terrifying is that even till this day, during the rainy seasons, you can still find teeth, bones, and clothing of the victims that rise up from the dirt. So as you're walking around this area, you're going to be able to see clothing that has risen from the grass, teeth still lying on the ground, bones, and that is something that you don't find in many other museums like this in the world. Here, the reason why a lot of the bones and the clothing have been left where they are is because the people just have found comfort in knowing that now they're resting peacefully, and they actually don't want to destroy the artifacts, the bones, while they remove them from the dirt. So for many years they actually were undergoing like an excavation process, but they stopped that because they were actually damaging a lot of the remains of the victims that they were pulling from the ground here inside of this killing field area. Now there's many different areas inside of this museum that you're gonna have some very hard time seeing. One of the ones that impacted me most, all of them impacted me in an incredibly large amount, but one that impacts me the most is this huge massive grave that is actually used for children that were under the years of 8 years old. So when a lot of the victims arrived here to the killing fields, they arrived not knowing exactly where they were going. They were blindfolded, and many women got off of these cattle trucks with babies in hand, and they were actually separated from their babies and put into different groups. Well, what the Khmer regime actually did to the children was beat them against these trees, crush their skulls, and throw them into these massive graves. Now, it's quite crazy. This the massive grave that we saw here had over 450 known victims inside. But from what I was told by the guide is that every year more and more keep rising during the rainy season. So something that's going to impact you for a lifetime, but something that is very much needed to understand the history of Cambodia. Now, I'm not going to dive in too much more deeper. I just wanted to share this experience with you guys and tell you that it is definitely one of those things that you need to, one of those places that you need to visit when here in the country. And I highly recommend it. It is an emotional one, but it is one that is going to give you a better understanding of Cambodia. Now, if you'd like to learn more, please feel free to read about the Cambodian genocide on the internet, because there are so much sites that give you so much more information than I am. I'm just a vlogger who makes videos and shares my experiences with you, but I'm not a historian. That's why maybe some of the facts that I gave you guys in this video were repeated a lot, but I tried my best to cover the subject, and I hope that you guys understood me well. And yeah, for now, check out the audience I had the whole time I was recording. Hello.
Hello.
Where are you guys from?
Siem Reap.
From Siem Reap. Oh, what's does that mean here? Are you guys are from this area?
Yeah.
Oh, nice. What's your names?
My name is Taitananam.
Tatananam. My name's Chris. And you?
James Na.
James Na. And you?
Jokara.
John Hara. Wow, I like your guys' names. And what's your name? Why are you hiding? Umanam. Wow, so the Cambodian people are super lovely, super nice. You have to come here, spend some time in Cambodia. The kids are lovely. How old are you guys?
They're not from.
10.
Ba.
10.
Ba.
Ba. And you?
And 12 years old.
Wow, you speak good English, bro.
Yeah.
And you?
11.
11 years old. Wow, amazing. So do you guys study English in school? Yeah?
Mickey Way School.
Oh, okay. Well, what grade are you in? You got a little shy on me, but they've been watching me record like the whole time I was here. So did I do a good job on my video?
Yes.
Yes? It's very sad what happened here, huh?
Okay.
Yeah. Alright guys, well, come to Cambodia. You're gonna love it, and make sure you visit these sites because they are extremely important. Later guys. Say bye to everybody.
Bye-bye. Bye.